Hi everyone, my name is Abigail Afi Gbadago. I'm mostly known as Afi. I'm the second Afi at this conference. So I'm part of Django Girls Ghana, Paides Ghana. I'm also part of the Python Accra or Ghana community. And today we'll be having a look at strategies when you're handling conflicts and rollbacks with Django database migrations. So this is a quick glance at what we'll be looking at today. I promise it's going to be quick. I'm not going to bore you out because I know most people do Django database migrations a lot. We'll look at a quick scenario and then the importance of migrations and how Django uses migrations to manage the database schema, potential conflicts that may arise, because I'm sure with your development experience, you would have had certain issues when you're handling rollbacks or migrations. If you haven't, you are lucky. Things to consider when rolling back or reversing the migrations, and then finally, we just discuss best practices when you are doing those things. So now, the scenario. So I know most people here, right, would have like top-notch code experience or developer experience when they are contributing to code or like pushing code and all that and deployment. But imagine a scenario where you have fields that are faked, right? And you've already made migrations and you've already pushed to prod. And in that situation, you've already altered the fields locally and you've pushed again, right? So now you're having conflict in your Django database and auto merge is not working. This seems a little bit far-fetched for some people, but this could be reality for like new hires or anyone who didn't or doesn't have that much experience in migrations. And I was in that spot some time ago. You may be feeling like this because I mean at that point the whole world is about to calm down, especially when it comes to prod code. So now we're going to talk about, just have to hold that thought. You're going to talk about database migrations in Django and then their importance. Then we'll come back to the answer for that scenario. So we know Django is designed, right, to work with relational databases stored in an RDMS type like PostgreSQL, MySQL, SQLite, and all that. So the database schema, as we all know, it comprises of the tables and then their columns and then their respective data types. So the migrations in Django are very crucial because they help us make changes, right? Without us having to write SQL statements and run the code. It just handles that for us in Django. So its importance is to help with version control, collaboration, because we get to push and share code, share migration files, data integrity, because once you push, it keeps a record of what you've pushed, the fields that have been altered and all that. It helps you reproduce your database, right? Because when certain migrations are applied in a certain sequence, you can get the database that you've already created based on the migration files. Also, you could also do rollbacks. If you've created or applied a migration that it's not really going on well, and you could also have automatic schema evolution. Now, looking at how Django uses migrations to make changes to the database schema, we know that for Django, initially I thought it makes or takes track of every change that you make. But I found out that that's not how it works. It actually built a project state of what your models should look like. And then that's a comparison in the end. So with every field you're altering, it doesn't really take notice till you apply the migrations. So you have a situation where you make a lot of changes without doing migrations, and then the sequence in which you made the changes do not really follow in order. So that's a limitation of like the migration in Django database. Now we'll look at the two main commands that almost everybody here uses when we are making migrations, which is the make migrations and the migrate commands. So when you apply a migration, right, we know that each operation is responsible for generating SQL statements like under the hood. So in a migration file, like in your IDE, you see that you have the dependencies, if there are dependencies, and then the operations. So the operations are like the SQL statements that work like under the hood. So if you need to create a table, if you need to alter or delete, those things work for you. So with this role of make migrations and migrates, they help you define models. And also when you have initial like an initial database, I mean Django app, you have the initial migrations. You could also make subsequent migrations with these commands. You could apply migrations, see migration history, do rollbacks and reverse migrations, see dependencies, and then sorry, um, I'm a bit nervous. So some options that you could use when you're making migrations are these flags, the empty, check, and merge. Funny enough, I've not used the empty before, but I tried it out and it works. The check also helps you to see if you have any problems with existing migrations, and that's super, super helpful. And then a merge, if you want to sort of merge a current migration with an existing one. So for the migrate, you also have the fake and fake initial. These I found very, very tricky because this what kind of landed me in a scenario I mentioned before where auto merge was not working. So now we look at potential conflicts that may arise during migrations. So you could have issues with dependencies, as I was saying. When you have migration files, you see that there are two main parts where you have dependencies and then the operations that are performed during every migration. So you could have issues with data loss, like concurrent changes that are not being synced. You could have bugs. You could have like issues with your data being validated. There are ways that people choose in order to resolve database conflicts like in Django, right? Or migrations or rollbacks. So an example is like merging, as I said before, reverting or resolving them manually. Sometimes you have to even go into the DB to make certain changes, but that's more like a last resort sort of thing. So now I'm going to talk about things to consider when you're rolling back or reverting like Django migrations. So to roll back, we all know is a command like migrate and then the previous name of the migration file that you want to apply. So for instance, say you've applied a new migration and you realize you made a mistake, you could easily like roll back and then do that. You also have the show migrations to see like a list of migrations that you've applied and then you could easily select which one to revert to or fall back on. Also, one thing that I also like to keep in mind is on applying a migration does not really take out the file because if you do migrations again, it's going to reapply it. So now we're going to talk about when rolling back and reverting migrations. I did mention there was a part where you could manually modify. So this is more like a last resort sort of thing, as I said, for me, because it's quite tricky. There are cases where you have to revert back to the last stable migration and reapply it, right? And sometimes when you do that, you have to ascertain if the details or the data you have in the database is right. Because you could apply a migration or revert and try and see and try and push code, but you have to test it before. So now I'm going to talk about best practices when dealing with conflicts and rollbacks in like DB migrations. So for me, I would say you should implement forward and backward database migrations, and you should try and test as you go before. If you need to revert, as soon as you revert, you have to like test it to make sure it's working. And also, if you want to go back to an existing one, which would be like a lower migration file, when you make the migration, you also have to test it too. You should try and maintain a clear record of your migration dependencies because sometimes you could have divergent migration files and it becomes really tricky to figure out which fields you should choose or which fields are present in this or what operation was done in what. So you have to really critically look at your migration file. I'm stressing on this because I don't want you to read my position or that I wasn't, sorry. Also, version control systems really help track changes. So always keep a look at your Git status, what you have pushed or what you currently have. Also, rollback should be approached cautiously, right? You should make sure that you've planned enough for it when you're doing a rollback. You should make sure it's in sync, like with your current code. Everything is working well before you push to prod. And also encourage code reviews. Don't be an island. Always reach out for help. Make sure that everybody in the team is in sync. Everybody knows, oh, you're pushing this new field, or you've done this rollback, or you've done this particular migration. So, in conclusion, don't forget to make and create migrations, and don't stash or make too many changes before applying or making migrations. Only use rollbacks when it's necessary. Be careful when you're faking fields, and only do so when you absolutely need to. Ensure that divergent migrations are merged, because there are times when you'll be working with someone, right, on your team, and you guys will have to collaborate together. So if you made a migration and let's say the ending is 0071 and the starting is 0070 and yours is 71 and the person's 72 and you both push at the same time, there's obviously going to be conflict. So make sure you always sync with your team on that. Look at the dependencies carefully and don't delete a migration file unless you have to, else you learn it the hard way. But if you feel you are strong enough to handle what comes after that, sure, you could go ahead and delete a migration file, but I wouldn't. And plan for disaster recovery. Always make sure you have backups of your database because anything can happen. Resources and credits. I sort of read up on these, and so that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening to me.